The following presentation is part of the Technology and the Corporation Conference Series, sponsored by MIT's Industrial Liaison Program.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to the MIT and Football Club Barcelona for putting together this panel about the future of team sports analytics. I think by the end of this panel, we should get new insights about sports analytics, but not only this, we should also get new questions that will lead us towards further developing the team sports, both research and industry. So in regards to my presentation today, what I'm going to talk about, if this works, it doesn't work. Stop. Okay, here we go. What I'm going to talk today about is the theoretical understanding that we have from our style of play. And based on this style of play, I'm going to try to explain how we shape the comprehension of the system under inquiry. And later on, I'm going to explain you the efforts of why we're trying to push forward an ecological physics for studying team sports. So nowadays, the two main exponents of our style of play are Joan Vilà and Paco Seirulo, who have over 40 years of experience in training, teaching, and transmitting our playing style to our soccer players. And also, they have experienced in their own flesh the contributions of amazing coaches that have changed the history of our club. And they have put together a few game fundamentals that explain, that underlie the principles of our game style. And the most valuable reward of their work, it was back in 2010 when 3 of their former players were nominated for the Golden Ball, which is one of the most important trophies at the individual level. So that shows the proof of this style of play that marveled the world nowadays. And if someone had to ask them, what's the essence behind this style of play? If you had to define with one single statement, what is the gist of our style of play? They would say something as simple as play and enjoy playing. As simple as enjoy playing. We need to enjoy while playing. And the only way that we regard this concept is by having ball possession. The ball is the center of everything, of the whole game. And this is why we say that our style of play is based on one creative idea of the game. If you have ball possession, you need to be creative. You need to be innovative. You need to find out new ways to score goals and to be better than the other teams. And now I'm going to explain how this conception, how understanding that the ball is the center of the game, it changed our perspective of understanding the game of soccer. So traditionally, the game of soccer has been understood as one team attacks, the other team defends, and there are a few transitions in between. But that's actually not what we want, because this, what actually does, it's dividing the game. It divides the whole in few phases, and therefore then you need to train players that specifically defend or players that specifically attack. But we don't want that. We want to have the ball. And around the ball, we are going to understand the game. Therefore, our understanding of the game is based on understanding playing football as a whole. The whole is the game. It's the whole system. And then there are 2 states that we regard as a continuum state, whether you have the ball or not. And this is why we say that when you don't have the ball, you take a step forward. You want to get the ball back. But when you have the ball, you take a step backwards. You need to keep possession. And from here, be creative. And obviously, all this theoretical perspective, for those of you who are more interested in sports analytics, it might seem not relevant, but actually, it is very relevant. Because based on this understanding and reconceptualization of the game, now we're going to see how we can shape the system and the modeling of that system. So towards developing this kind of new sports analytics that we are pursuing, I use the CES model to define the minimum system we have components, we have an environment, we have the structures that hold the emergence of a system. And based on that, we kind of look for a formalism in soccer that has these properties. We have components that have possession of the ball, other components that are not in possession of the ball. Then we have an environment. And it happens to be that the environment can be divided in environmental static properties, goals, field lines, but also in dynamic environmental properties, the ball, but also the players. The players are part of the environment. But here, we needed to make a decision. And the decision was how you can differentiate between what's the actual agent, what is the actual focus of the research, and what is the environment that constrains that particular system. And here, the decision that we had to make, it was pretty simple. The player that has the ball is the one that is going to be the agent. All the other players, independently of the team that they belong to, are going to be part of the environment, of this dynamic environment. And notice here that agent XA can be, at any time, environment XZ. That means that, I'm passing the ball to him, he passes the ball to him, and every time, every single moment at time, you need to identify who is the agent. And around this, we are going to try to understand the organization of the system. So here it was the first intricacy towards unfolding the complexity of the system. And the next, it was to understand the structure, the relationships between the components and the environment of that system. We have agent XA that relates with the teams. And here I put these teams as a fluid, making the analogy as fluid dynamics, because here we're interested in the ball. But we're interested in how the ball constrains the whole system, not at the local scale, but a higher order scale. The emergence of the interactions of the players of one team or the other. And it happens to be that this interacts with this environment that at the same time are these players that are here. And this is something that we need to understand, that this is a circular causal system. There are always relations that are held between one component and another, and if this relation changes, the whole system restructures. So this is the other part of the complexity of the system. And now that we have defined the formalism and we have the ontology of the system, now we could apply some dynamics, some tools of dynamical systems theory. But we need to be wary of a couple of things. The first thing that we need to be wary of is that dynamical systems, they don't know the status of the system, nor provide any principles underlying the behavior of the system. Therefore, we need to understand this. And in the past, for example, when studying collective behavior, some people have used, for example, the Kuremoto order parameter that takes angles, and they look at the synchronization of different components. Usually in thermodynamics, this is used for multi-oscillator systems. But here, some people start using this adaptation of the Kuremoto order parameter in soccer, and they start looking at the displacements in the longitudinal axis and displacements on the y-axis. And they didn't put or throw into the model the positional data. They had to do a Hilbert transform and get the instantaneous phase angle, and then they could analyze the synchronization of this. But actually, what did happen is that they could find high levels of synchronization of a team, but the other team was scoring a goal, which means that there was no correspondence between the actual state of affairs of the game and what the analysis was showing to you. Well, that's a bad use of dynamical systems tools. What I did with my professor at the University of Connecticut, Till Frank, it was to take the different angles of each position of the player at every moment in time relative to some environmental properties that seem to be important, like the goal that the team is defending or even the ball. And what we did, it was to model that for a few matches, and here we have an example of a 20 seconds play with AC Milan being the white team and FC Barcelona being the team in possession of the ball. And here we have angles of these 20 seconds of the team in defense relative to the goal that they are defending. And if you submit the time series of these angles to the cluster phase analysis, you get one collective variable that is the synchronization of all these players relative to this key environmental property, which is the ball. And I'm going to show you the video. And if you see at the graph on the right, while the video is playing, you are going to see that the synchronization of the team is changing. And it's changing in a way that it seems to correspond with what's actually happening in the match. There is a decay in synchrony when there is a breakdown in defense and FC Barcelona has a scoring opportunity. I mean, Messi scored, but for some other player, it would have been a scoring opportunity. And after saying this, after making this point, I would like to make the second point, and I finish after this second point, which is about dynamical systems are not enough to address the question of how to couple information to energy in a principal way. And this is the reason why we are trying to push forward this ecological physics, an extended physics for complex systems at the ecological scale. Interaction between an organism and environment that it's ruled by perception and action. There is this game of soccer, it's a rate and energy dependent activity. If I move, when I locomote, I have to do it at the right pace in the right direction. And if I have to pass the ball with a particular force, I have to do it with the right magnitude, with the right direction. And this right qualifier, the right qualifier here adds a normative component that implies an epistemological dimension into the game. That means that we need to couple information to energy. And this is what's going to self-organize the system, not only of one player, but of the whole player or the whole team or system. And to finalize, I would like to make the analogy between the busy reaction, very non-equilibrium, far from equilibrium system that it self-organizes by virtue of producing one substance A, but that it's inhibited for another substance B, and this system or chemical reaction self-organizes. And we would like to take some principles of this system on the top and apply them in the system on the bottom. So here in the system of the bottom, we have a team that is in possession of the ball, but this team doesn't score to infinity. There's actually another team that inhibits their actions. And I'm sure that some principles of this system can be applied in this system and vice versa. Thank you very much, and I would like to acknowledge my colleagues from FC Barcelona and from CESPA from the University of Connecticut. Thank you.
So we'll have our last speaker of the panel, Mr. David Tenney. He is a high-performance manager for the Seattle Sounders. He leads a department of strength, conditioning coaches, performance analysts.
To New York, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Keep asking and leave you with Javier. Excellent presentations, and hope to keep moving for the next sessions. Thank you very much. I'm going back to New York with the team to play Washington tomorrow. Well, Wednesday. Ciao.